Once Kurtzman's gone and Paramount decide, let's rebuild this franchise, whoever takes it on has a big problem. And in this video, I want to talk about the big challenges that face anybody who wants to reinvent or rebuild Star Trek after the Kurtzman era is, fingers crossed, over. Barring some amazing turnaround of Starfleet Academy Season 2, Strange New World Season 4, and the final bit of Season 5, Kurtzman's era of Star Trek is going to end in failure. With low ratings, Section 31 was low, Starfleet Academy's low, and the last season of Strange New Worlds, despite Strange New Worlds being, I think, one of the best out of the Kurtzman era, subject to Season 3 of Picard, I think it's going to end in failure. Season 3 of Strange New Worlds really wobbled. It was a bit of a mess. So naturally, Paramount's going to do some kind of break. They need to break with the past. And that means we might spend 3 or 4 years with no Star Trek. Or at least 3 or 4 years with no new Star Trek in production, because it's going to be probably mid next year before it comes off screen. So hopefully they've got an announcement by then, but then there's a couple of years of actually shooting something. But here's the big problem, and it's our own problem, really. It's a problem of the fandom. Anybody who takes this on, yeah, we have TNG, original series, DS9, we hold them on a pedestal. There is so much story being written about that everything will be compared to those. And that creates a universe problem for whoever takes Star Trek on. If you think about it, prequels, I'm not a fan of prequels. Enterprise has grown on me. And I think the reason why I didn't like Enterprise to begin with, but it grew on me after it went off air. I do kind of wonder whether some of the Kurtzman era might grow on me over time. You know, absence makes the heart grow fonder kind of thing. But Enterprise grew on me. And I think why Enterprise did okay, compared to, with me anyway, was the fact that it didn't intersect with what I already love. So in other words, TNG stayed out of it pretty much. DS9 stayed out of it. Voyager stayed out of it. Even there was a few crossovers, but the original series stayed out of it. And I think that is where one of Kurtzman's mistakes. He tried to build on something that is kind of sacrosanct, and he didn't do it well. And the problem for a producer, if you're going to run a show, you want to be able to have some creative freedom. But with a universe like Star Trek, there is so much already developed. You are walking into a minefield. So I think the biggest problem for any producer is going to be, how do I navigate not tearing up or damaging what people love, whilst also telling new stories that are consistent with it? And so if I was there, and I worked for 3.5 years in television, so I kind of understand a little bit about this stuff, I would be thinking about, how do I make a new story in a completely different world? Now, Kurtzman tried to do this. Well, he didn't at first. He decided to build on the universe, and that's where Michael Burnham came in, and Spock, and all of this stuff that now is being compared to the original stuff. And it kind of fails. What he then tried to do is, this is going down like a lead balloon because we're walking into so much canon issues and storytelling issues, and we're putting ourselves up against something that's on a pedestal. Let's move it out of that time zone. And so they put it in the 32nd century. And that problem came then. It was a lot of the things they did were unbelievable. The future should, even if you're, 400 years, 300 years into the future, 200 years into the future tech, whilst obviously is fiction, needs to actually make sense. And that's where he went wrong, I think, with Discovery. There's loads of ways he went wrong. But I think the big problem the new Star Trek will have is we need to carve out a section of the universe that has not already been built, that is still believable and still rooted thematically and stylistically in what people love. I don't believe for a minute that you have to change Star Trek to adapt to a new audience. I think if you look at a lot of things that are going on now, yes, there's the people jumping on trends to try and appeal to new audiences, but there's a richness in Star Trek, a morality in Star Trek, a hopeful future in Star Trek that I think actually is what people need right now. If you look at the world we're living in, even to 10 years ago, it's much darker. We've got pandemics, we've got wars, we've got uncertainty about the future, we've got economic challenges, we've got, a lack of affordability of life. What better than to give people a better future to hope for? And I think those themes can stay, but I think the next iteration of Star Trek, it has to, as much as I want legacy, and maybe legacy can work because it's post, but it's not far-flung into the future. Maybe it can work, but it needs to detach itself from what's already been built so that it's not going to walk into problems, and it needs to stay grounded in believability. Even when we start using technobabble, it needs to be believable. And, detached nacelles, I mean, really? And the Okudas getting the grounding of the science and all of that kind of stuff needs to come back. But I think, yes, new stories. Yes, they don't have to follow canon. They could detach themselves from canon, but they can't break it. And, it could be, a starship in the Beta Quadrant that is doing its own thing. And it could be in the kind of TNG era or late TNG era, but it's detached from everything. It doesn't need to see the Enterprise D or the Enterprise E or the Enterprise F. It could do all of those things, but it needs to be detached so that it doesn't link up. And I'll just leave this final little rant here. One of the things I think is a huge mistake, which Hollywood seems obsessed with, is prequels. For me, prequels basically don't work because I already know what's going to happen. I know where this all ends. So I think that's why I didn't get into Enterprise. And Discovery, it was like, how are they going to fix all of this? That's what I was confused. I love the Pike Enterprise, actually. I think it's a brilliant looking ship. But it still left me with, how are they going to fix all of this? How does it all, fit together? And it doesn't. And that's the problem with prequels. They don't fit together. So the big problem any producer's got, and it's not an easy job. If you're coming in, Star Trek fans are the most detail-orientated, that they know the canon. That, my wife thinks I'm pretty sad because when I put TNG on, I can pretty much recite what the episode says. And the other day she said to me, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Nobody. I was just quoting the TV show that was actually playing out." We are nerds in this stuff. And if you're a producer coming into this and you want to make a really good show, that is a flipping minefield. So my advice to Paramount, not that they'll listen to me, is you need to go completely out of the universe that we're in. That does not mean far-flung into the future. It does not mean completely different. It means you cannot walk into pre-established stuff. And you need to, worst case scenario, it's those overlaps like First Contact where, Picard's on a call and Janeway's the Admiral. Things like that overlap work. But if you start to intertwine those stories, you're going to walk into major issues. So, yeah, I think we're going to have a few years of fallow once all of this Kurtzman trek's over. I'm kind of glad it's over. I know people have been saying, well, you don't love Star Trek because you want it. No, I want it over because I think the ideas aren't very good, and I think other people might bring something different to it. Could be that the Paramount picks somebody else to run it, and I hate it even more. But I feel like something different needs to happen, and Paramount smart enough to look and go, where's the money and where's the demand, and they're going to fill it, hopefully. And for me, I know they've been chasing a new audience, but the way to get a new audience is to actually deliver some really compelling stories and really compelling characters and get people invested in what Star Trek really is, rather than go, how do we adapt Star Trek to a modern world? No. How do we help tell those stories and do that same, what Star Trek is, better? And people are going to disagree with me there, but you don't, Shakespeare doesn't get rewritten because the words are complicated. Yes, you might have these fun spin-offs where they put it into modern context, but Shakespeare is still Shakespeare. And I know some people are going, Star Trek is not Shakespeare. It is to me. It is to me. So that's the big problem I think they're going to have. It's a big franchise, nerdy fans. They got to build something that doesn't cross-pollinate into pre-existing universe. So, we can't have things that connect together. And if they do, it has to follow the rules. They cannot just undo and rewrite history, because that's where the fans get really angry.